I think we're going to start. So let's join our palm together and bring them to your heart center and connect in this moment for the yoga speaker series and unite with each other. In yoga, we talk about union. So let's unite. I welcome you all to our University of Guelph Yoga Speaker Series 2021. This is our second event. So we have our second speaker. He's going to talk today about deeper dimension of yoga. But before we do that, I think it would be good to bring our minds, our emotions, our feelings to equanimity, bring them to an evenness so we can benefit the most, so that we can make the best of this hour and best of the rest of the day. So I urge you, if you can keep your eyes closed throughout the session or whenever you can, and then just, go inside, focus on some point in your body. And one of the places that you can do is your area between your eyebrows, the third eye. And that will immediately or very quickly focus you. So make sure that your spine is straight. Okay, so we're just gonna do a little bit of, as I said, conditioning before we start, formally start this event today. So I suggest if you can expand your chest at the sternum, okay, at the sternum, and then you will see there is the heart, the rectus abdominis muscle here, and the diaphragm there, okay? So that will help you with the diaphragmatic breathing or yogic breathing. So we are going to inhale. So when you inhale or breathe in, your diaphragm is going to extend, okay? And then you will feel that your abdominal area or navel area is extending. And then keep inhaling and then fill in your rib cage. And then also you'll notice that your clavicles are lifting up a little bit. And then we are going to exhale. And then you'll notice that you are a little bit, bending forward, So your clavicles will go down, your rib cage will contract, and then you will see that your lungs are contracted and feel that your navel is going towards the spine. So this is yogic breathing. So keep paying attention to your breath. Breathing in deeply. Feel your breath at the nostrils. And then follow its path. Both inhale and exhale. Remember to bring your mind, as I suggested, on the third eye. You can also bring the tip of your tongue to the roof of the palate. That is also very good to focus. So we are bringing the mind in and making that union of the body and the mind. Our focus is on what is the task at hand. You can move your palms and you can bring them to your knees if you're sitting. It's best to sit if you can during this hour. If you're on chair, that's fine too. But this is a chance to sit on the floor, on the mat. And there is a reason for that. So this is a meditative asana. We call it Sukhasana. In the class, in the lots of yoga classes, they will say, cross-legged. I say Sukhasana. Sukhasana. And with that, the happiness will come. But make sure that your mind is on the breath or somewhere on the body. If your mind is wavered, doesn't want to be steady, then consciously bring it back to your breath. Breath is always one of the best tool or place to fix your mind. So again, you can keep your eyes closed or you can open. And then what we are going to do is we are going to bring our, in Parvatasana or mountain pose, sitting, okay, we're going to bring our arms from the side, breathing in, and then straightening our spine. Make sure that everything is at ease. Sthir Sukh Manasam. You're holding your breath for some time. And then when you exhale, your palms together and they can touch on the head, on the face, and then bring them back to your heart. As soon as you do this joining of the palms together, the yoga starts happening. The opposite polarities, left and right, they start becoming united. And then one more time, breathe in. And then try to lengthen your spine. Holding your breath here, and then again exhale, bring to your heart center. So idea of the asana is that can we do the meditation in the movement? That is the idea behind the asanas. Can we be in the void when we are practicing the asana? And then one more time, last time. And then we are going to exhale. So that was a little bit of conditioning. Whenever we do our, sometimes, our groups meeting, we always do some meditation, and the meetings are usually very peaceful, less of the fighting there. So, okay, so I'll start by introducing myself. So my name is Lalit Jarat. I am an employee at the University of Guelph. I have been there for a long, long time. It's a wonderful place to work. That's all I can say. And since last 10 years, I have been teaching yoga, and we have created a meditation, yoga and meditation collective at the University of Guelph. So, and before we had another initiative called Classical Yoga for Total Health and Awareness, So we have moved that to this new collective. So it is more like, the whole university is engaged in that, that's the idea. We want to bring, or we have brought actually this to the university level platform. Okay, so that's the idea here. So this is a free initiative, and it is sponsored or supported by Wellness at Work of University of Guelph. Anybody can participate, students, staff, faculty, community member, anybody can participate in that. No age bar, no any other bars. Okay, so that's the definition of yoga. We don't have any age bar or any other bars, anybody can practice that. So the idea here is that we want to make the yoga practice and philosophy more accessible. It is free, anybody can come, and we usually, hold the classes during the lunch hours, so it is easier for people to join. So we have created a mission statement. I think it's important to share that so that you know that where we are coming from. So our mission statement is a yoga collective that cares about cultivating health and well-being on the diverse University of Guelph campus and beyond. Our goal is to offer valuable tools for achieving a balanced state of mind and body. For the true spirit to the yoga, that's why we have this. So this yoga speaker series, the theme of the yoga speaker series is the yoga philosophy and practice, relevance for the individual and the society in a contemporary world. Okay, so if you have heard about our first speaker, he talked a lot about how to bring the yoga to the social level, just from the individual but to the social level, and how we can apply that in the issues of the contemporary world. So our speakers, they are lifelong practitioners, very well respected in their own field. So they are going to share, as I say, they're lifelong yogi, they've been practicing. So they want to share their journey of yoga, and also, their love of what the yoga is about, So we have 5 speakers in this series. And at the end of the series, we are going to bring a discussion panel. And I hope that you will join all those 5 yoga speakers, So remember that this meeting is being recorded. So when you're speaking, you may be, if your video is open, it's going to be on the screen, and that may get recorded. So you can ask your questions at the end of the lecture, and you also have a chat at the bottom, so you can also send your comments or questions there anytime. So before we start the speaker series, I would like to give the land acknowledgement. I think it's very, very important. I am so happy that, whenever we do some meetings, we always do the land acknowledgement, So I'll make that acknowledgement. The University of Guelph resides in the ancestral and treaty lands of the Attah-Venderon people and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And we recognize and honor our Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Métis neighbors. The dish with one spoon covenant speaks to our collective responsibility to steward and sustain the land and environment in which we work. So this is our land acknowledgement. And what I'm going to do is in the last our presentation, we were not able to share our MP Lloyd Longfield's video. So I'm going to share that, so you see that, let's go here. I'm gonna just go here for a moment. Share the screen. I think that was very nice of Lloyd to share.
Thank you to the University of Guelph for continuing to find ways to improve life, now through a speaker series on yoga, looking at ways to align the spirit, the mind, and the body, reducing stress and anxiety in these periods that we're going through, and going forward, learning new talents. Yoga is a great way to relax, to meditate, to look for the best in life. So thank you again for continuing to help improve life in Guelph and now internationally through this speaker series.
So that was very kind and generous of our MP Lloyd Longfield. So now I'm going to introduce Dr. Hans Becker, our speaker today. He is very entertaining. He's a fascinating speaker, and he has been, all of you know, perhaps that he taught at the University of Guelph for 35 years, So Johannes Lemke Emke Becker, known as J.I. Hans Becker, was born in Friesland, the Netherlands, June 24, 1947. He came to the US at age 5, but moved to Canada to do a PhD in 1971. So that's what we were talking about. He was 24 years old then, and taught sociology at the University of Guelph for 35 years. His yoga teacher training was at Shivananda and Kripalu, and he taught asanas and pranayamas as well as meditation. He has actively participated in Tibetan Buddhist chanting and carefully studied the teachings of Tsongkhapa on nothingness, Shunyata. Maybe someday I'm going to write a book with him about timelessness and Kala. I am really, really interested in that. He has written about Gandhi and about rural sociology. His work on Gandhi and on the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord, was inspired by his year with the Gandhi Peace Foundation in India, 1979-80. So I will leave now the stage to Dr. Hans Govinda Becker. He will tell you the story about that. And as I share that, his topic today is deeper dimensions of yoga.
Thank you, Lalit. I've prepared a PowerPoint, and we've had, Lalit and I have had several discussions about what tack to take, what things to emphasize. In this 30-minute talk, I can only scratch the surface. So I've decided that the emphasis will be on two of the yamas that Patanjali talks about in his Yoga Sutras. So the title, subtitle, Deeper Yoga, but Yoga and Everyday Life. This was something that was stressed in my conversations with Lalit. We live our everyday lives as ordinary citizens. We don't go necessarily to the Himalayas. We don't go and live in an ashram in Thailand. We do not live in an ashram, although we may, of course, visit from time to time, which I have done, both in India and in Canada and in Europe. But meditation can be helpful in our daily lives, even if we are householders, even if we are ordinary citizens, even if we're not monks or nuns or priests or especially devout people. Ahimsa. In this talk, I can only scratch the surface. Yoga does not give you instant gratification. I like this cartoon. Runners to your mark, get set, go. Okay, come get your t-shirts. So that would be instant gratification. No effort at all. And sometimes that's kind of fun to have instant gratification. But that's not exactly what yoga is about. There's a certain degree of effort that is required. I also think it's funny that the people in this cartoon all tend to be quite overweight. Ahimsa. No one reaches higher states of awareness overnight. It's a long process or process. We live on a little tiny kind of like balloon, a circular item. In the core of that is a lot of iron, and that helps us to stay balanced in our solar system. On the left-hand side, you see a Thai painting of, I think it's Brahman, and below some beautiful flowers from the Keukenhof in the Netherlands, which remind me also of awareness. Those pictures I chose as ways of thinking about awareness. Ahimsa. My background includes time spent at ashrams, first at Shivananda in Valmorin, Quebec. Vishnu Devananda, who was the spiritual leader there then, gave me the spiritual name Govinda. And as most of you know, Govinda is one of the names of Krishna, and it emphasizes Krishna as a cow herder or cowboy. The reason Vishnu gave me that name, he joked, was I spent the whole summer herding the children, which is true. I went there with my son, and the advantage of being there all summer was that he could participate in everything without me having to pay the tuition and room and board. But it involved a lot of chopping of vegetables and cutting down trees and planting trees and doing all kinds of tasks that I was required to do. But it brought me in close contact with Vishnu Devananda. It was a very interesting experience. And it was my first intense experience of trying to do the asanas. Ahimsa. So my spiritual name is Govinda, and you probably know that in art, Govinda is represented in many different ways. So I do sometimes associate with the name, and it gives me a little spiritual boost to have a spiritual name sometimes. Ahimsa. Then I studied at Kripalu in Lenox, Massachusetts. You see the chapel there. It was a Jesuit retreat center. Before that, it was a estate owned by Andrew Carnegie. But it became the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health under Amrit Desai. And then Amrit Desai was asked to leave because he had violated fundamental norms. And it is run now as a very successful center. I totally recommend going there for a long weekend. The food is excellent. The ambiance is very, very good. Some people from New York and Boston complain that it's not a five-star hotel. Well, what did they really expect? But it is a very nice place, very comfortable. Ahimsa. So I did my yoga teacher training at Kripalu. It took 1 month. I had taken an introduction to Sanskrit. It was a 2-week experience. I went to all kinds of workshops, humanist psychology kinds of Gestalt workshops. And later I volunteered for 1 month and I did many weekend workshops. So I kind of got to know Kripalu. I got to know many of the people there. I got to know that they are human beings and they're not all saints. Ahimsa. Later, I volunteered, as I mentioned, and there is a program, I volunteered there as a program assistant, a gopher, and that was a term that Lala did not know. A gopher is someone who goes for this and then goes for that. Go for the microphone, go for the pillows. So I was very much a humble gopher, but I really enjoyed being a program assistant because it also gave me a behind the scenes view. The right-hand side, you see the chapel again with people listening to a talk. Ahimsa. But it was my year in India that helped me to get a better context. Oops, misspelled context. And working with the Gandhi Peace Foundation was very important. The picture at the left is familiar to many of you. It shows Gandhi in London, England at a major conference. It was called the Round Table Conference. The Prime Minister was Ramsay MacDonald, and there's a great deal written about what happened and 5 visits that Gandhi made to London. I had a student who did a master's paper on the 5 visits, and James Hunt wrote a wonderful book about that. And we had James Hunt here at the University of Guelph to talk about his book about Gandhi's visits to England. Ahimsa. We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man or woman changes his or her own nature, so does the attitude of the world change toward him or her. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and a source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others will do. So the term used by Gandhi is satyagraha or satyagraha, which comes from the Sanskrit root word sat, which means truth. Satyagraha, the person who is a seeker of truth, the person who radiates truth. And this is important for the way in which yoga is expressed in Bhagavad Gita. Ahimsa. Patanjali, as many of you know, wrote Yoga Sutras. We don't really know what he looked like, but this is an attempt to make some possible representation. It's a little bit like Harvard University. Nobody knows what Mr. Harvard actually looked like, but they have a nice statue of him anyway. Ahimsa. So Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, as many of you know, involves 10 basic principles that are at the root of being a person who can practice the way of understanding the world that is involved in yoga. And I think that it in some way parallels Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That would be something to really talk about. It's obviously not the same thing, but it has this notion of a hierarchy. So the yamas are the external ethics, and the niyamas are the internal ethics, is one way to express it. The yamas are the ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. The niyamas, saucha, santosha, tapas, svadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana. Ishvara is one of the names of God, and many of you know the statues of Avalokiteshvara, or they make the I and E, Avalokiteshvara. That's very important in Buddhism. So I'm only going to talk about the first 2 yamas, 2 ethical principles that you should consider as important to your physiological and safety aspects of life. And of course, it then goes into love and belonging and esteem. And a person who practices even these 2 yamas will begin to realize a greater deal of self-realization. Ahimsa. So the yamas, number 1, ahimsa. I signed many of my emails ahimsa. I signed many of my letters ahimsa. It's a concept that Gandhi discussed quite a bit. Ahimsa is one of the most widely known of all the yamas, and it can be translated as non-violence or non-harming. Not only does ahimsa refer to non-violence in the context of our relationship to other human beings, but also in terms of our relationship to animals, plants, ourselves, our yoga practice, planet Earth, etc. And when we say our yoga practice, many people try to force themselves into postures that they're not ready for. When I've had students, I've warned them, take it easy the first 10 classes. Inevitably, they'll try too hard. They'll wake up in the morning feeling stiff. I say, well, maybe you pushed it a little too hard. Be mindful that you have to be nonviolent towards yourself when you try to do a yoga posture. And we're not all built alike. Our bodies are not alike. When we live with the attitude of ahimsa, we live from a state of non-harming. We abide in an intention and attitude of total care and compassion for life itself. We get rid of the desire to cause harm or malice of any manner toward ourselves and others, and, ideally, we cultivate self-love, which leads us to the love of all beings. The Greek word is agape, as used in the Christian religion. Love. Love in the sense of fraternity and sorority and community. Ahimsa. The second of the yamas is satya. There's that root word sat, which means truth. Satya is purity of speech and truthfulness. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Now, you're supposed to affirm or swear that. And it's been shocking to me that some people will swear it on the Bible and then not practice it. It's a tall order, but it is foundational to actually doing yoga in a way that is more than just doing exercises. Little white lies might be necessary to save someone's feelings, and that would be part of ahimsa too. It's not easy or always straightforward to combine ahimsa and satya. If the Gestapo is knocking on your door and Anne Frank is living in your attic, you don't immediately tell the Gestapo or SS Nazi that Anne Frank is hiding in your attic. It's not that kind of simplistic use of the concept of truth. There are circumstances where purity of speech and truthfulness and nonviolence have to be balanced against one another. Now, I'm not going to go through the other yamas and then the niyamas. That would be too much for one short talk. But to really do yoga, then at the very least, you start with ahimsa and satya. If you do not eventually strive to fulfill all of the 10 yamas and niyamas, then it will only be going through the motions at the higher levels. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that you don't do asanas because you've told a lie, or you wouldn't even begin to do asanas because once in your life you weren't pure in speech and truthfulness. That's not exactly the idea. The idea is you strive to be a person who is nonviolent, who loves others, who does not seek the negative in another person, but seeks the goodness in another person. You strive to do these things. And if you're striving to do those things, then you're striving to do the asanas, the pranayamas, and the three levels of meditation will be easier. Ahimsa. So the asanas, expand what you think they can be. It's not important to look good. A lot of my students wanted to look good. I tried to dissuade them from that. Don't, for a moment, care how you look. What is important is to feel the inner process or process. You feel it inside yourself. When you do enough yoga, even if you're somewhat casual about it, even if you drop it for months at a time, when you get back into it, you feel something is happening. And if you don't feel that, then it becomes an empty ritual. Too many students strive to hold a posture that makes for a great photograph. But we're all built differently. Our bodies are different. And it is the inner process that is most important when doing asanas. You can do the asana of cleaning the house, but doing so in a meditative way. I certainly know my house needs cleaning, but I do little bits at a time, and I try to do it meditatively. You can do the asana of washing the dishes, washing them by hand, not with your dishwasher. In the film Razor's Edge, Larry learns to not just rush through washing dishes, but to experience it, to feel it. I recently did the asanas of fixing a leak in the bathroom sink. This involved a lot of stretching underneath the sink. I was really physically engaged. And instead of huffing and puffing and swearing, I tried to breathe into it. I tried to stop every now and then and just stop and realize what it was I was trying to accomplish. And I did accomplish the task, but I did so, I think, in a meditative way. Ahimsa. So pranayama, breathing is the key to meditation. Breathing is the key to life. In everyday life, we of course do breathe, but we do so without conscious thought. And often we breathe in a very shallow manner. We don't stop to take deep breaths. When we get anxious, our breath gets even more shallow. So it is precisely when you are most stressed out that it is time to draw on the techniques of breathing. This is a photograph of a woman who is a pilot, but also practices yoga. And of course, it's a humorous photograph because no one would sit there if the engine was running. But she's obviously someone who experiences stress, and yet she, in this picture, looks like a radiantly appreciative person. Ahimsa. So Bhagavad Gita, the song of the Lord Krishna. Krishna is a manifestation of the ultimate reality. It's only one of many possible ways of thinking about ultimate reality, but it is one way. And in the Gita, Krishna plays a very prominent role. But in one of the chapters of Gita, he reveals his true form, as many of you know, and his true form is not anything like a human being. Now, it's not exactly what it may seem it is. That is the idea of Krishna. Um, it's sort of an optical illusion. Krishna is a blue boy. That many people, if they have no acquaintance with the iconography of popular culture in India, might wonder who that little blue boy is. And I put the illusion of the elephant. You'll see that if you look at it carefully, you're not quite sure how many feet that elephant has. Well, that's the way you have to look at the Krishna as a little blue boy, or any representation, because any representation of ultimate reality is going to be limited to our five senses. But it's a pointer to, it's not the actual reality that is being depicted. It's like an optical illusion in that sense. Ahimsa. Most of my practice, now that I'm 73 years old, is not the asanas and the pranayamas, although I do them a little bit every morning in the bathroom and every now and then at the house, and sometimes regard some of my activities, everyday life activities as a householder, as a form of yoga, because I do them meditatively and breathe. But it's Jnana yoga that is my main occupation and preoccupation. This is a picture of a famous artist named M.C. Escher. Some of you have heard of him. In addition to the yoga of work, karma yoga, and the yoga of devotion, bhakti yoga, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's also the yoga of assiduous study. And it's depicted as the study of Ishvara, but it doesn't mean that, to my mind, it doesn't mean it in a narrow sense. The Sanskrit word is hard to pronounce, but Jnana is close enough. And Lalit has been trying to teach me how to say it. I'm going to teach him how to say shunyata. Wisdom is not the same as scientific knowledge. So I'm totally in favor of scientific knowledge. I'm a social scientist. I've often wished I could also be a natural scientist at the same time. I'm very interested in statistics and mathematics and technology, and all of these kinds of things are very, very important in life, and certainly in education. But wisdom is not the same thing as knowledge. Knowledge in the sense of true scientific knowledge. So the wisdom truth is the truth of the grand nature of reality. And I think some of Escher's prints really helped me to understand that a little bit. Ahimsa. So art can tell a story. This is a picture of Dirk Willems. My background in my family is Anabaptist, particularly Mennonite. Menno Simons, the founder of the Mennonite religion, was born in a village called Witmarsum, which is 40 kilometers away from the village where I was born, called Marsum. And there's a famous story about Dirk Willems. He was being followed by a sheriff who wanted to arrest him, and he ran away, and he was successful in getting away. But then the sheriff was running across the ice and fell in the ice. So Dirk Willems went back and saved the man who was arresting him. And then he was arrested. The man who was saved didn't say, well, now you've saved my life, I won't arrest you. He still arrested him. The other two drawings are by Escher, who is from the part of the Netherlands I'm from, called the province of Friesland. And the one on the left is the praying hands. I like that. And the one on the bottom is a puddle where he so beautifully depicted the seeing of, the trees in the puddle. So I believe art is also very important in understanding yoga because it gives us an understanding of a reality that is not our everyday life reality, even though, of course, we do live in everyday life. Ahimsa. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are 4 books. Book 1 is Sutras 1 and 2. Atha Yoga Nusanasanam, Nusanasam, Nusasanam, Yoga Anus Asanam. And now an explanation of yoga is being made. So that's the first sutra. Now we will make an exposition of yoga. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Restraint of the fluctuations of our minds. The stuff of the mind is what we call yoga. So yoga is restraint of mind fluctuations. My wife was very happy that I included our two cats in this photograph. It's interesting to watch cats and think about the fluctuations of mind. Ahimsa. That is, yoga is holding back from constant fluctuations in our thoughts and feelings. Although we live in everyday life, it's not the everyday life of a peasant in the Middle Ages. It's not the everyday life of an urban dweller in a metropolitan city without some little added aspect, which is the yogic awareness, the feeling that you have when you stretch your body, when you breathe deeply, when you spend a moment meditating on a puddle, or when you think about a cat, or when you are aware of the leaves rustling in the trees or the snow falling in your backyard. All of that is yoga. It's holding back a little bit from moment to moment, as appropriate, from the fluctuations in our thoughts and feelings, through being physically able to do that through the asanas and pranayamas, but as a goal to realize the totality of existence and to have some tiny little grasp as a mere human being of the whole universe. Ahimsa. Georg Feuerstein was a German American who wrote The Yoga Tradition, and I totally recommend that book if you want to get a deeper understanding of the history of yogic philosophy. I was shocked that he was born the same year as me, but he died already quite a long time ago. His book has all the detailed information that a student of the philosophical basis of yoga would ever need. It could be used in an advanced course with dedicated students who have had the rudiments of Sanskrit and a keen desire to learn the more intellectual parts. So while some people like to forget about the intellectual parts of yoga, I think it's also important to acknowledge that those parts are there, even for the householder. It's not that you have to go and study in Varanasi at the Gandhi Institute of Higher Studies for 10 years and learn fluent Sanskrit. Ahimsa. Again, the key is the inner process or process. I chose to do my yoga teacher training at Kripalu because at that time I felt the instruction was more tuned in to students. Shivananda is great, but it seemed to me at that time, and I don't know if it's changed, there was too much stress on quickly getting the postures just right, which is good. It's very good, but it doesn't really get us into the manifold reality that is reflected in the names of Krishna. Do not expect a steady progress forward in your yoga. Since taking my first yoga class 50 years ago, I've had many ups and downs, many periods where I wasn't even interested in yoga at all. But then I would come back and realize that there's a great deal to be gained. Moreover, I have learned that just because a yoga teacher can do beautiful asanas, that does not mean that that person is able to live up to the ideals. Ahimsa. So Georg Feuerstein died. It shocked me when I realized he died in 2012. That's almost a decade ago. I was also born in 1947. So, of course, yoga doesn't guarantee a very long life, but it does sort of help us to reflect on the meaning of life and death. This is a picture of me reflecting on a gravestone. The person buried there is Captain John Baker, and John Baker would be the English translation of my name, Johannes Bakker. So it certainly made me think. Ahimsa. Vishnu Devananda gave me the very common spiritual name of Govinda, and it's one of the names of Krishna, as I've mentioned. That picture of me is in New York City. It's a beautiful arcade near the fountain. Ahimsa. So yoga is not restricted to only one religion or even just one worldview. Yogi Stephen Cope from Kripalu wrote very well about that in his book. And Stephen and I had many deep conversations at Kripalu when I was doing my yoga teacher training and at various other times. The book cover there is called The Zen of Base and Ball. It's one of my favorite short books. It talks about baseball as a Zen exercise, which is one way to think about it. And I'm putting that only just to indicate that yoga is not connected to only one religion. It's not necessarily one specific religion. It's more like a general worldview. Stephen Cope is here on this picture because he doesn't look like a yogi, does he? He looks like a professor or something with all those books. But he was a very deep thinker and a very good teacher of yoga, asanas, and so forth. And then the drawing there comes from a scientific journal, and it's an attempt to represent magnetic fields and energy, E equals mc squared. Ahimsa. So that's the end of this talk. I really enjoyed the opportunity. I'm very grateful for Lalit to even consider having me as a speaker. I don't want anyone to begin to believe that I'm some kind of saint or bodhisattva or some kind of pure practitioner. That's not true. My focus in my work has been on the ideas of Max Weber. Here's the cover of one of his famous books, The Agrarian Sociology of Ancient Civilizations. But it was Weber's work on Indic civilization and the neo-Weberian work of Randall Collins on Indic civilization that has helped me to get a deeper appreciation for some of the things that I've learned through trial and error and through personal experience. So thank you very much for your willingness to listen to me. And I welcome any questions or any comments whatsoever. And I appreciate the existence of this group and the support that it's receiving from our Member of Parliament and from the University administration. Thank you. Ahimsa.
Thank you very much, Hans Govinda Bakker. So that was a great talk. We talked about several things, before we said we're gonna, take this topic, So one of the topic was householder yoga, and Hans, she has really, played it very well, talked about, how the yoga is in the everyday life, So thank you very much for that. Very fascinating, your presentation was amazing, very interesting, And so we now, leave the stage open for any questions, I'm pretty sure you will have many because, these things, usually we don't talk about, in the regular yoga classes, only when you will go for, certification or something like that, So we will entertain any questions and.
You have a question, Lalit, from Vadi.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
May I speak?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Bakker. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. It has a lot of deep meaning. I appreciate it. And also for Lalit Jairaj for coordinating this. I just have one question from one of your slides. You said in the context of yoga, it is the kind of streamlining the thought and other things. But to me, the controlling the thoughts and other things is always associated with the meditation, not with the yoga, which is the physical postures and other things. Again, you can tell from this question, I'm at the very basic level. So can you please tell me the difference where I am confusing myself?
Well, you're not confusing yourself and you're not confused. It's perfectly reasonable to think of it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you think of it in terms of the way in which Patanjali has put it together, then the picture turns a little bit different. You get a slightly different view. So I was trying to just simply express the view that Patanjali expresses. And that doesn't mean that it's Holy Writ. It doesn't mean it's the Bible of yoga or anything. It just means it's the opinion expressed thousands of years ago by a person who we now attribute the name Patanjali. We don't even really know the real writer. It may have been a group of writers. It may have been an oral tradition. So there's nothing wrong with what you're thinking. It's just that there may be another way of also thinking about the same thing.
I was just thinking, as you were telling me to think another way, I'm just thinking maybe in my meditation is about being in. When you do the asana, yoga asana, just like you were doing the plumbing and you were stretching and all those things, if you are in the moment, that is bringing the thoughtfulness, controlling that to the task at hand. Would that be a good parallel?
Yes, certainly being in the moment as opposed to being distracted by many things. I think that the breathing in the moment is really important. So, you get all uptight, you're doing something and it's not going well, and you stop and you count to 10, or you take 2 deep breaths, or you just relax for a moment and go outside and look at the backyard or something. It's the ability to distance yourself from the stress and tension of the everyday life experiences that we all face, the little stresses of the householder. You have to wash dishes, you have to take out the garbage, you have to wash your clothes. All these things have to happen. Sometimes the machines fall apart. So to be able to be a little bit above that, a little bit outside of it, not to be so drawn into it that you're caught swearing at the machine or something. I've heard that. I've heard lots of people, they have many expletives that they use, that somehow the machine will function if they use expletives. Well, that's not exactly yoga either.
Thank you very much. It is helpful, and it also gives me some hope. When you said you have been on and off with yoga, I'm going through that mode only in the last year. I have been more because of the COVID lockdown and other things. I'm more into yoga and meditation. So hopefully, there is some hope for me in the future.
There's there's a little bit of hope for
Thank
me
you.
too. Look, nobody. I'm definitely not pretending to be anything other than just a very beginning student of yoga. You could tell in the way in which I pronounce the first phrase from the Yoga Sutras. I studied Sanskrit, but I'm just at the kindergarten stage, and it was Professor O.P. Dwivedi who gave me some confidence that I wasn't totally out to lunch. In the book I did called Gandhi and the Gita. It's an edited book. It's basically Gandhi's translation of Bhagavad Gita. And I got permission from the Sarva Seva Sangh to put out a Canadian edition with my comments on it. My comments basically say Gandhi did a terrific translation. So it was O.P. Dwivedi who gave me that confidence. And that's how I met Lalit, through O.P. Dwivedi.
Thank you.
And that's how this whole yoga initiative at the University of Guelph started, So it was O.P. Dwivedi, actually, originally he started this group. And then, one day he came around me and we were practicing and say, okay, tomorrow you're going to teach, And that's how it all started. And then within few months, I went to get my yoga certification, One thing I wanted to say that, this doesn't have to be question answer, you can join the discussion anytime, because that's the idea, we want to just open the platform for discussion,
There is a question in the chat feature.
Hi.
Yeah.
Dr. Baker, please. Hello, Dr. Hans Baker.
Thank you.
I have a question. This beautiful presentation quoting Patanjali Rishi's Yoga Sutra. It's beautifully done. I have been studying Patanjali for 2 or 3 books. One is recently received by Barbara Stoller Miller. And she is a Sanskrit scholar again, and she studied Patanjali Yoga. Other is by Swami Vivekananda, again his version on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And third was another one. So actually, when I come to his system, as you mentioned, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratihara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So 8 steps he's quoting. And Chaitanya Rodev that means we should abstain from the outside input coming to your mind, all the turbulences coming to your mind. We have to narrow them, stop them, restrict them. That's his idea. So when you sit for meditation or pranayama, still your mind does waver sometime. And he does say it will happen. Now, my question is that he is trying to say you have to focus on an external object to start with, to practice it. When you practice for a long time, then you have to go to the suksham, mean the finer objects. Like suppose you focus on a lotus flower and the flower, and then comes the suksham part of that flower, the finer part of the flower is its petals or its fragrance coming to you. And further, that's the finer part. Similarly, from the object that we focus on, then you go to the inner, finer objects of your body system. And mind must be according to him, as I understand. If you can confirm that, you have to focus on your mind, which is the finest or the very suksham, they call it Sanskrit, part of the body. So that's what he's trying to go to the samadhi in that steps. Is that the way you're understanding Yoga Sutra from Patanjali, sir?
Yes, very much so, although I couldn't have expressed it as well as you have, but that is my understanding. I love the saying that Laura Huxley did. She has a wonderful gramophone record, an old-fashioned vinyl record, and she says, "Look at your flower and let your flower look at you." And I think of that all the time when I'm looking at a flower or a tree or a plant or a squirrel, or you kind of, you don't just look at it as a reified object, you know, something that is hard and fast, like a Cartesian object. You look at it as a living thing. And then if you can get beyond that stage, then you're really quite advanced, because not everybody goes to the 3 levels of concentration of meditation that Patanjali talks about. And certainly I don't claim to be spiritually highly evolved at the level of the highest samadhi or moksha or nirvana. I'm not anywhere near there, but I know that it's an interesting ideal goal.
Yes, yes, sir. This is a long struggle to go to samadhi. I think it's difficult for us at this stage. And that stage can be reached according to your knowledge in this area.
Well, let me give you an anecdote. I was in India only for the year, and I was with Gandhi Peace Foundation, and we went to visit a village that was being assisted by Gandhian constructive workers, and there was an acharya. It's the first time in my life I'd met a person who was actually called an acharya, and I had a good 10 days with this wonderful spiritual man. And then later on, I had a chance to meet Vinoba Bhave, another great acharya, better known than the first man.
Yes. Yes.
And these men were not just ordinary men; they were human beings, and they weren't particularly masculine. They were kind of androgynous, and there was something spiritual about them that I don't come anywhere near close having. They were really dedicated and highly evolved. Through a really assiduous practice of these principles that I know about, but that I find difficult to actually practice in a constant way, in the way in which I think they did, you see. And that's partly, of course, the circumstances of my background. I wasn't born in India. I don't speak 3 Sanskrit-based languages and all of that. But I find it inspirational.
Yes. That's really, I agree there. I agree there, because there are people in our mankind among us who have reached that sort of, some sort of understanding spiritually at the higher levels. They are there. Thank you so much for explaining that to me. Just a question now, that some people from the previous life, they have done so many good karmas, they come back, they call it Jivan Mukta, means who are already got the salvation and come back to help them, human mankind. And that's what they are among us, to help us. Thank you, Gandhi.
Thank you very much. Let's take another question, last one perhaps.
Thank you, Lalit Bhai and Hans. I'm borrowing the phone of my friend. I hope you can hear me. Is it all right?
Yeah. Namaste, Anantaji. Namaste.
Namaste. And
this is our first speaker, and he's calling from India, Chennai.
And thank you, dear Hans. And it is the Sivaratri, the light of with Lord Shiva. And my query is, thank you so much for your deep journey. And with Patanjali, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is also a poetry. And I humbly wish to explore the poetic dimension of Yoga Sutra in Patanjali and also in our everyday life. For example, the cat mind. Now, one everyday practice of stilling our mind, not STELING, that is what is happening. The world is stilling our mind. So when the world is stilling our mind, like the Krishna, the butter thief, right? So how do we still STILL mind and the role of prosaic fundamentalism. It is in that context, yoga as part of our everyday life, building on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, how it can also be a poetry of hope, a poetry of resilience. And so these are my humble queries.
It's difficult to answer, Anantagiri, Sri Ananta. I didn't fully understand your question because there was some difficulty with the electronic communication. But what I did understand is, how do we reconcile Patanjali's version of yoga with the other versions that one could discuss? And that is what Feuerstein discusses so well in his wonderful book, The Yoga Tradition, and in his encyclopedic dictionary of yoga. And I'm well familiar through Randall Collins with the many debates that have been held. So, for example, even on the question of transmigration of souls, not all great Indian thinkers necessarily believe that. There's a whole school of materialist thought in ancient India. So, as a sociologist and as a professor of social sciences, I also feel that we have to look at these things in a way that the average yoga practitioner often does not do. And I think you, Anantagiri, are wonderful in the way in which you've edited these superlative books that I've only read some of the chapters in the books that you have been kind enough to include me in. And there's just so much wonderful knowledge out there.
So what we will do is, we are almost actually a little bit over time. So we will close this session, but if you want to stay a little bit more, I don't know if Professor Hans Becker or Anantaji has time, but if you want to stick around a little while, you are welcome to do that. And what I want to do is that I want to thank again the speaker. I want to thank all of you. I really, really appreciate that you are supporting this speaker series and you are getting the benefits, So the reminder that I want to share with you is that we are recording all these speaker series, okay? So they are available on the YouTube. And if you look at the chat, I have actually posted the address of the website. So you can go there and you can find all the information there. You still have 3 more speakers and then also the discussion panel, So watch the recordings, collect your questions, and then send to us, and then panel discussion, we can share that, So our next speaker is going to be Dr. Franco Vaccarino. He is the past president, just the last president and vice chancellor of University of Guelph. So he's going to talk about pleasure, anxiety, and the balance, And please make sure that you follow us on the social media. And we also have on our website feedback link, please, share your feedback because this is very important to us. And, we will share that, it will stay there for, your knowledge or for, reference, So I will, if, do you have some time, Hansi, or? Hello?
I have time, yes.
Okay, so there was one question that was in the chat, and I would like to share that with you. It's from Sheila O'Reilly. You may know her actually. She told me she knows you. So her question is, do you have an example of how yoga helped you while dealing with the stressful life of academia? And was there a notable difference when you took a break from your practice?
Yes. Teaching asanas to students taught me to be a better professor. It used to be my idea that I was some kind of lofty high professor in the Humboldt University in Berlin in 1890, That was my ideal model of a professor. Each lecture should be a sterling essay in its own right, publishable the next day, a chapter in a book. When I started teaching yoga, no matter how many times I would tell someone something very simple about how to move their body, how to consider moving their body, not that they were forced to do it, but that it might be a reasonable way to do a posture, to do an asana. Or when I talked about breathing, it took a very, very long time for the student to even begin to catch on. It's like me trying to learn to play a musical instrument. I'm very, very bad at it. And I need really patient teachers to teach me even the simplest things. So then I realized as a teacher of sociology, I was going far too fast. I was assuming all kinds of knowledge that the average second-year undergraduate student absolutely did not have. For example, on an exam, I asked a question about Frankfurt, and the student was livid. She was so angry. She said, "How can I possibly know that there's a city in Europe called Frankfurt?" And it kind of blew my mind because I thought, well, doesn't everybody know that? But I know now that not everybody does know that. So sometimes I've learned from yoga that you have to go to fundamental basic things in order to teach anybody something, that you can't just assume. And I've often had this experience with people that there are things I happen to know because I've gotten a PhD and I've been in university settings all my life that most people don't know. For example, I was in Philadelphia staying at a youth hostel, and I wound up giving a lecture to about 20 young people about the concept of the solar system. And to me, I thought, oh my God, everybody knows there's a solar system, but they didn't. They didn't know the concept of Copernicus and the change from a heliocentric to a geocentric concept of the solar system. I mean, from geocentric to heliocentric, sorry, turned it around. So yoga has taught me that you don't just learn things quickly if you don't have the basis for that learning. Of course, that's a fundamental psychological principle, but I think that's the way it is. You can't learn about the yamas and the niyamas overnight. I mean, you can memorize the words, but to learn what those things are it's a lifelong process. There's a question. Yes, please ask your question.
I have an experience to share in the light of academia and yoga. Yoga contemplation, the eightfold technique of Patanjali, it's an epistemological process. It's knowledge creation and also knowledge affirmation. What happens, in my words, if I can put it right, is that when you are absorbed in focus on a single subject without any distraction, you are cut off from the normal epistemology through the sensory faculty. And when you're cut off from the senses, you see things in different light. You see things more as they are. And that experience is what helps in academia. You think more creatively. You think different ways of explaining things. So for an academic who is also a scientific researcher, yoga is a gift from God because it makes you look at things. It puts you in a frame of mind that looks at things in new ways, unconstrained by the organs of the senses. And that is a great gift. And all scientific research is done this way. How do you design an experiment? First, you have an idea. This may be the truth. You design an experiment to prove that. So the idea comes from your focus of the mind when you are cutting the mind off from all other distractions. You focus on a subject, you get new ideas. And that is where the scientific research happens. You can prove the research experimentally. Einstein was not an experimental scientist. He came up with so many ideas in space science and also in quantum physics. The domain of Newtonian physics is the domain of everyday experience. And he got out of the domain of everyday experience through contemplation. It's a way of creating new knowledge. It's an epistemological process. It can, of course, do other things. It can also transform you from whatever you are to whatever you want to be. But it also is a process of creating new knowledge. I would, in modern language, you can call it research.
I agree completely. I would only extend it a little bit from the natural sciences to the social sciences, the humanities, and the arts. That's why I posted those pictures of M.C. Escher. To my knowledge, M.C. Escher knew nothing about Patanjali or Indian philosophy or the history of India or, the Upanishads or any of that. He might have. But he had a wonderful grasp of the ability to see as an artist. He saw things in a different way. And if you've ever looked at an Escher print or an Escher watercolor, he plays with perspective, and he's also a good writer, I've discovered. So it's also true that you don't necessarily have to follow one path to receive the yoga, and you don't necessarily have to follow one path in applying the yoga. The term yoga can be extended in a useful and heuristic manner in the way in which you have just so eloquently told us.
Thank you for the affirmation. And I want to also, it's an announcement of a weekly meeting we have on Zoom, and we spend an hour together in deep breathing and in camaraderie, you can say, once a week on Mondays from 7 to 8. I put the details in the chat.
Yes, I saw those. I'll share that. I'll definitely share that.
And so please, Lalit, if you can share that, or people who are interested, maybe they can download the chat file, and you'll have the link to register for it.
Yes, I saw that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's time to say bye for now, and we'll see you again.
Lalit, if you allow me, Dr. Shiv Talwar and Dr. Hans Baker. The yoga understands when you practice yoga, the old ruts in the brain, it creates new paths, it creates new channels in your brain. Is it true that you think differently with the yoga practice? The brain is tuned to the old ruts in the brain of thinking, of the old thinking, the classical, that is, this is rigid, this is why the religion, this is that. And we are trying to avoid those religious codes all the way in our life. But the yoga practice does teach you differently or creates different ruts in your brain to think differently. Is that innovation created by yoga in your brain, sir? Dr. Shitravar?
It's, there's a, in olden days, they used to think that brain once formed cannot be changed. Nowadays, they know that brain is plastic. It's called neural plasticity. It's a science that you can study these days in neurology. And in plain English, you call it transformation. Yoga is transformational. Okay, it changes your thinking, the way you think and you feel.
Okay, thank you. That's a good idea. Thank you. That's the way, transformation. Yes.
Yes,
Putting negativity to positivity.
I accept this idea of neuroplasticity very much. I know the research on which it's based in psychology and in neuroanatomy. It's also true that for people who grow up in the Judeo-Christian Islamic cultural setting, to be introduced to yogic thought is very, very helpful. For example, there can sometimes be people who hold their religious views in a very rigid manner, and that causes them to think only along one track. And that does not allow them to become as plastic in their thinking as perhaps they might be. But when you're introduced to a different culture, like my spending a whole year in India with the Gandhi Peace Foundation, not in five-star hotels, believe me, it opened my mind to a whole new reality. When my wife and I came back, we felt so rich here, and of course, it took a while to become more Canadian and to realize all the material wants that people think are necessary. But it's the opening up of the mind, not only because of the specificity of yoga, but the very fact that it's something different for many, many people who have never been introduced to it as children and don't have the same background.
Yes, thank you. Beautifully enhanced the question which I've asked, beautifully answered. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Shitravar. Thank you, Dr. Hans.
Actually, I wanted to share that Patanjali, okay, I don't know, 3,000 years ago or however, long in the past, in the future, he talks about in his 4th chapter, Chitta Nirmana. Chitta Nirmana. And that is actually neuroplasticity.
Okay.
One more thing I have to share, Lalitji, if I am permitted. Hans talked about bringing yoga to the attention of people from the Abrahamic religions. We just had a conference of 4 sessions, and we were using yoga essentially to bring harmony in the world, harmony amongst different religions and faiths. There is an observance, a yearly observance of World Interfaith Harmony Week, and that week was the first week of February, and we had a conference on that, and the principles on which yoga interfaith harmony works. The 2 principles or 2 commandments: love the one God and love the neighbor.
Yeah.
And we're all loving a God, but God of our own culture, our own religion, our own faith. That love can only make us in harmony with the people of that faith. How do you go beyond that? That was the question. And yoga shows us the way. So we put the yearly observance of the International Yoga Day and the yearly observance of the World Interfaith Harmony Week together, that yoga shows the way to achieve the aspiration of the World Interfaith Harmony Week, or aspiration of the world to have harmony. And yoga, once you can experience the analytical aspects of the, overcome the analytical aspects of the sensory faculty or the organs of the senses in deep contemplation, then you see that there is only one God, and that God is the God of the universe. And that's not the God that we've been thinking of all our life. So once we get over that conditioning, then we can love the whole world. We can love the neighbor, independent of who that neighbor is. And so yoga has got a zillion applications.
Father John Veltri at the St. Ignatius Center here in Guelph often invited me to give talks. I gave talks on Hinduism and on Buddhism and on comparative religions and so forth. And the Ignatius Center is run by Jesuits. So the reward for giving a talk was to have dinner with the Jesuits. Mm-hmm. And that was an amazing experience. And I have this stereotype of Jesuits that they're highly educated. So I was asking some questions, and Father Veltri really surprised me. He said, Hans, I am a Jesuit, and I have had a good education, but I'm not an intellectual. It really blew me away. Like I was assuming, that because he was a Jesuit, he knew everything there is to know about Roman Catholicism, and he didn't, and he acknowledged that. And the same is true when I would teach a course in sociology of religion, have 150 students. I would always assume there would be one student in the class who would know much more about Catholicism or Judaism or Islam or something. And generally, first, second year students are very ignorant of their own religions, yes, much less other religions. So even the question of God, and what that means to different people, and whether Ishvara is an interesting way to talk about it, or Avalokiteshvara, that kind of discussion is very, very interesting to me. And I think that the problem with some of the new atheists is they're just not educated. They didn't take my course. They don't know about other religions. They're only basically opposed to the religion they were brought up in, and they have some deep emotional disaffection with Anglicanism or something like that.
That's wonderful. I see that, there is so much interest in this topic, this talk, and in general yoga, If you are interested, we have a blog page on our website. You can share your thoughts there, and then we can interact, So if you're interested, let me know, and then I will direct you to that page, if people want to write a blog, about the speaker series or anything else, related to yoga, So let me know on that. And with that, let's close this wonderful speech lecture from Dr. Packer. And we will see you again next Thursday. You can close your eyes.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Let's say namaste to each other. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Baker. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shiva. Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Have a good day. Have a nice enjoy.
Bye, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's beautifully done. Nice.
Thank you, Lalit.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
God bless you. Thanks, Lalit.
Honestly.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
Thank you, Lalit.
Thank you very much. Yeah, remember, without you guys, it won't be possible. Thank you, everybody, all the people.
I'm seeing you after a long time. Must be years.
That's the way it is. Thank you so much.
God bless, guys.
That's what I'm studying, Dr. Shiv about. It's a one by Swami Vivekananda. Yeah. And the other one is And the other one is Dr. Ivlad is the other Yoga Sutra of Swami Vivekananda also. It's another one. I took these two books. It's about 18, 19 or something like that. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste, Lalit. Thank you for entertaining.
Namaste, Anantaji. Anantaji, are you still there?
Thank you, Lalit. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Victor. Thank you.
Are you in a dream now?
Namaste, Lalit Bhai. Namaste, Hans. Again.
Namaste, Ramgiri.
It's midnight in India, so thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Shivratri there.
I've never known that
Mahashivratri.
Mahashivratri, yes.
Yeah, Mahashivratri. Yeah. Yeah, Lord Shiva, he took all that poison.
Giriji, what does Sandhya Rani Giri mean exactly?
Pardon?
We have Ananta Giri still with us, I think, in India, or has he left?
What was that?
He has a new title, Sandhya Rani Giri.
He did say he was borrowing someone's phone.
He's borrowing someone's phone whose name is Rani Giri. That's a female.
Yeah, maybe his spouse. Or some relative, I guess. Daughter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I leave now?
Thank you.
Have a nice lunch now, everybody.
I'm leaving now.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lalit. Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe and get vaccinated.